Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Carey, and one of my roles at Levine Music is chair of the Winds and Brass Department. I grew up in this area, and music, specifically the flute, has been part of my life since elementary school. I was part of my school band program in Fairfax County and played in many flute choirs, youth orchestras, and attended summer camps. I also took private lessons at a place similar to Levine. I'm thrilled to be able to have music as part of my life on a daily basis and be part of Levine's faculty for almost 20 years.
Good afternoon, everybody. Rebecca and I are happy that you're here to learn about the woodwinds and brass family of instruments. My name is Kathleen Jacoby, and I'm the Associate Chair of Woodwinds and Brass here at Levine. My primary instrument is also flute, and I've been playing the flute since I was 6 years old. I grew up in Salt Lake City, so not in this region, but a little far away. And I also grew up playing in my local bands and orchestras. And I love that playing a woodwind instrument allows me the opportunity to collaborate with all different kinds of players in a variety of ensembles.
Today, we'll be providing a quick introduction to some of the members of the woodwind and brass families. Mrs. Jacoby will be sharing what they look like and some initial ways to explore creating sound. You'll see that some of them look quite different from one another, not only in size, but in the material from which they are made. Of course, the instruments we play today are quite different from the ones that were the original first iterations, but one thing that unifies them all is the need to use air to make them work. If you have any questions along the way, we are happy to answer them as they come up. We'll also have a short Q&A session at the end, so let's get started. There are 5 instrument groupings in the woodwind family. We have the flute, the clarinet, the oboe, bassoon, and saxophone. Each one of them has unique members. So in the flute family, there are multiple segments that we can explore, and one of them is the recorder. Did you know that that's part of the flute family? So if anyone has played this lovely instrument, maybe in 3rd grade, it is part of the flute family. And we also have the piccolo, the regular flute, which Kathleen is going to talk about, and then the alto flute. So these are some of the most common instruments that you will see in the symphony orchestra and in your band programs.
Okay, so I'm going to give a little demo on how to get started on the flute and a quick intro into the instrument. The flute is in 3 different segments that get put together. So we have the foot joint, which is the bottom part of the flute. And then this is the main body of the instrument. And then we have the head joint. I'll show you how to start with this today, but first we have to develop something called our embouchure, which is a big vocabulary word, embouchure. Bouche is the French word for mouth. So embouchure describes how you shape your mouth to play each of these instruments. And each of the woodwind and brasswind instruments uses a different shape of the mouth and a different style of embouchure. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about today. We're going to make a lot of silly faces, so that's very exciting. For the flute, we blow across the top of this lip plate, so there's no mouthpiece that we bear down on, as in like we do on the other instruments, which I'll demonstrate momentarily. I start my students off by making a face that I call the 3rd lip face, where you take your tongue and put it between your lips like this. And then we also have a very fun activity that my students are usually excited about called spitting rice. So I've got my rice here.
I have my rice here too.
Most of you should have some at home. So when you do the 3rd lip face, you can practice putting a piece of rice on the very tip of your tongue and spitting the rice away, using your articulation to create friction articulation, meaning the tongue moving back, and that creates our air. So we blow across the head joint, and watch me use my 3rd lip face. Blow across the top. I don't know if you can see better from this angle.
Great.
I'm not covering the hole completely. I'm covering a small part of it and blowing my air across the top of the hole. So that's how I start with all of my students, getting those muscles ready to be able to play the flute. I'm going to do a quick demonstration of part of a piece called Allegretto by Godard, just to give you an idea of what the instrument sounds like. Here it is. That's just a short demonstration of what the flute can do. And I am going to turn the time back to Rebecca for a moment as I prep to show you a little bit about the clarinet.
Sure. So one of the things that is very exciting about the flute is that when you are little, you can also play the flute. So students as young as 4 can begin with something that's called the curved head joint. And so instead of having the straight head joint, we now have a different part that can go into the flute. And it makes it a little bit more easy for smaller bodies so that they can reach all the keys. So we don't have to change instruments. We just have to exchange head joints, and it's a very portable instrument, so that's why we both love it. The next 2 instruments that Mrs. Jacoby is going to practice showing us is called a single reed instrument, and you'll be seeing that she has a small piece of wood in her mouth right now to get it all ready. And when she puts that piece of wood, which is called a reed, onto the mouthpiece, when you blow, it creates the vibration, and that's how we get the sound. So she'll be talking about the clarinet next.
Okay, so like Miss Rebecca said, this is my reed, and it's just a piece of wood that's been shaped in a way that it can vibrate freely across the instrument. So I wet it in my mouth so that it can vibrate better. Before I talk more about the reed, I'm going to talk about some of the different parts of the clarinet. As you can see, it's right here. I'm not going to take it apart right now because it's in a lot of different segments. It's a little trickier than the flute to just put together. This bottom part here is called the bell, and it detaches at this metal ring. And all of the instruments that I'll show you from here on out do have a bell. A flute does not have a bell, but all the rest of the instruments do. And then we have our lower joint from here to here. And then the upper joint from here to here. And then we have the barrel and the mouthpiece, which the reed attaches to. And this piece here, this is called the ligature, and it attaches the reed to the mouthpiece. So in order to make our embouchure for the clarinet, we get to make another funny face, which is really exciting, always. You take your bottom lip and curl it underneath your bottom teeth, or curl it over the top of your bottom teeth, rather. And then your top lip, you just want to bring it down to the top of your teeth so that it's covering, it's not completely curled under, but it's covering the teeth so you don't see them. I like to say you curl your lower lip over your bottom teeth and then pretend that you ate a sour lemon. So you get this kind of that silly face there. I'm going to demonstrate just a few notes on the clarinet. I am not a professional clarinetist, so we'll have a surprise guest in just a moment to show you what the instrument can do. But I'll give you an idea of what it sounds like. So that's your general sound for the clarinet. And like the flute, I move my air through the instruments, and we always want nice supported air on all of our woodwind instruments. So our special guest is my husband, Andy, who, lucky for you, is a professional clarinet player and can demonstrate a lot more than I can. So I'm going to turn the time over to Andy for a moment.
Hey everybody, just gonna play a little bit of the clarinet, maybe go through some scales, play a little excerpt of a piece, something like that. So, just like the flute, the clarinet has a lot of flexibility with how quickly you could play, allows for lots of flashy, fast stuff like that. Pretty fun instrument to play. I think everybody should give it a try.
Okay, so the next instrument I'm just going to show you is called this. Oh, the next instrument I'm going to show you is the saxophone. And I'm just going to compare the different mouthpieces of the clarinet and the saxophone for you. They look really, really, really similar. So they look nearly the same. They're about the same size. The saxophone mouthpiece is a little bit bigger. This is the saxophone mouthpiece. I'm going to grab my saxophone now. Again, we have our bell. This bell is attached to the instrument so it doesn't separate like it does on the clarinet. And then we have this piece called the neck right here. So this detaches from the main instrument. And then we have our mouthpiece and our ligature. A lot of teachers will start their students just on the mouthpiece and the neck. I don't have a saxophone reed, but if I did, I could make a noise on it just like that with that same embouchure that we used for the clarinet. So that's curling your lip over your bottom teeth and then pulling your upper lip down and rest your teeth on the top of the mouthpiece. I have a video queued up from the great Charlie Parker. So I'm going to share that video now and we'll get to hear a little bit of what the saxophone can do. Hold on, I've got to share the sounds too. Molly went over that with me and I still forgot. So that's a little bit of Charlie Parker. He was a bebop era jazz performer for those that aren't familiar with him. There's also classical saxophone players if you want to look that up, but there's countless examples online these days. And you can hear the sound differences and the technique differences and the style differences. And of course, jazz encompasses such a huge range of different styles of playing as well. I'm going to turn it back to Rebecca while I prep my brass instruments.
Okay, so just to continue on with the idea of saxophone, they are not usually found in a symphony orchestra. However, there are a handful of pieces that do feature them, but saxophones are very popular for jazz, rock, and of course, musical theater, pit productions, as well as marching band and symphonic band. So for woodwind instruments, you might have noticed that there are what we call keys. Some people call them buttons, but they're actually called keys. And the mechanism that is on all of the woodwind instruments is based on the same system. So you might have remembered that Mrs. Jacoby was lifting her fingers off on the clarinet when she was demonstrating the scales and putting them back down. And when we lift our fingers off, the sound gets higher. And as we're putting our fingers down, the sound gets lower. So that's generally how the woodwind instrument families work. So now we're going to explore some of the brass family members. There are also 5 members of this family. They are the trumpet, the French horn, the trombone, euphonium/baritone, and tuba. And each of them have kind of modified versions that will appear in marching band. So the French horn also can be called the mellophone, and the tuba switches into something called a sousaphone. But they are based on the same concept of valves. And once you learn one, you can easily switch to the other because, as Ms. Kathleen will demonstrate, it's all about the embouchure.
Okay, so I'm going to show you my trumpet here. It comes in two main pieces, the mouthpiece, and then you have the main instrument. There's all this mechanism here as well. As Ms. Rebecca said, the trumpet has valves, and there's only 3 keys to depress over these valves. So the trumpet has a difficult job, and all these brass instruments have a difficult job. They choose their notes with a combination of their fingers, or in the case of the trombone, which I'll show you in a moment, has a slightly different mechanism. And then they manipulate their air to make all kinds of different notes. And it's amazing to watch because there's just not a lot that goes on in the key work because we're very limited in the keys. So it's a different mechanism to create the tone. I am going to start with my mouthpiece. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. We want to start with what we call buzzing our lips. That's how we create the embouchure for the trumpet. You want to pull your lips together. I think in the shape of like if I'm saying M, so a little bit tighter corners. The woodwinds are a little more relaxed, and then pushing your lips together. Try to blow air through the middle of your lips and make a buzzing noise. This takes a little bit of practice, so it's something that I've done before in my car while I'm driving, trying to get the hang of it, but it's a really good preparation for the embouchure on the trumpet. So let's try our buzzing a couple more times. Say, One more time. So someone whose primary instrument is trumpet, their buzz will be really, really, really clear and a lot cleaner than mine is. But when I add my mouthpiece, I can get a tone. And you can also manipulate the pitch on the mouthpiece as well with practice. I'm going to show you some notes on the trumpet. I'm thinking about my buzzing and then supporting my air through the instrument. So the notes that I played all used a different combination of key pressure, but professional trumpet players or more practiced ones than I can get lots of different tones on one fingering and lots of different pitches based on how they use their air. I am now going to pull up a video of Phillip Smith playing a trumpet concerto. So I'll share my screen so you can see a little bit more of what the trumpet can do. So that's a more representative example of trumpet playing. And Miss Rebecca, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, great. So the concept of how you make a sound on the brass instruments are all common, all using that buzzing technique. I was not attempting to buzz because I didn't want to interrupt with the camera picking up 2 different microphones. So I was just imitating the embouchure shape, but then letting Mrs. Jacoby do the actual buzzing. But if you wanted to practice it, it would kind of be like a raspberry. So if you've ever, experienced that, as children often like to make that sound when they're younger. They're actually expert at brass instruments. So the sizes of the instruments are quite different from each other. So now we're going to look at one of the larger brass family members.
Okay, so I have a trombone here. Let's see if I can fit it on the screen. I'll have to show you in pieces. The trombone has a really similarly shaped mouthpiece to the trumpet, but as you can see, it's much larger. So larger instruments produce a lower sound. So think about the violin versus the cello. The cello is much larger and produces a lower sound. Same thing with the trumpet and the trombone. The trombone has a much lower sound. We have a larger mouthpiece and a much larger instrument. Instead of those keys that I showed you before, we have a slide. And again, I'm not going to take this apart because it's a little bit tricky to put together. But this outer slide piece comes off of this inner slide. And you can see the inner slide is that more silvery looking thing. And then the outer slide is this brassy piece of metal. So you change the length of the instrument, and that changes the pitch. And then you manipulate your air to get the pitch that you want. So I'll show you some buzzing on the mouthpiece for trombone. So I can get different pitches on the mouthpiece based on how I'm using my air. But even the mouthpiece has a lower tone. So I'll show you a couple of notes on the trombone as well. So as you can see, as I lengthened the instrument by pulling out my slide, I got a lower pitch.
What's the trombone most known for?
Sorry?
What is the trombone most known for?
I don't know. I don't know. What?
The glissando.
Oh, sure. I don't know if I should demonstrate a glissando, but yes.
No, but it's a really fun little thing to listen.
It is fun. Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is. It can do a much more connected glissando because of that slide. They don't have to change their keys. One last thing for the embouchure on the trombone that I forgot to mention earlier. I do know some trombone teachers that don't utilize buzzing a whole lot because the embouchure is so much more relaxed than the trumpet. But I have heard our trombone faculty say it's almost like you're saying the word Peru. So that ooh feeling is similar to the embouchure of the trombone. And then you support your air through the instrument to get a pitch. I'll show you a short video of Joe Alessi playing a concerto on the trombone so you can hear that. Okay, so that's a more representative example of the kinds of sounds you can make on the trombone. And I think that that's it for my examples. I do have, I don't know if you wanted to show, I have a picture of just what a double reed looks like and the double reed instruments. I don't know if we wanted to go through that or if we're out of time. Sure. Okay, so one like subgroup of the woodwind family that we didn't have a chance to show you are the double reeds, which are the oboe and the bassoon primarily, but also there's several other double reed instruments as well. And the reed, I'm going to show you a picture of a bassoon reed. So their reed looks like this. This is why we call it a double reed, because it's two reeds pushed together, and most bassoonists and oboists will make all professionals will make their own reeds. So they actually sit and tie the reeds together, and it's a whole experience all in of itself. But this is what the double reed looks like. And these are the more primary instruments in the double reed family, especially the oboe and the bassoon. And these are not, like, the sizes are not representative. So the oboe is much smaller than the bassoon. The bassoon's quite a large instrument. Okay. I think that's it for me, unless you wanted to talk about any of the other instruments, Miss Rebecca.
Well, I just wanted to tag on to the oboe and bassoon and in the fact that they do not participate in marching band. So they are not able to have their various parts and march safely. So you might see them on the sidelines playing the xylophone or doing some different instrument instead. But as just a recap quickly, the woodwind family members have multiple parts of their instrument to put together. The brass instruments basically just have the mouthpiece and they put it into the instrument. They might have one or two other little additions that they need to take care of. But generally, that is something that's a little bit different between the winds and brass family members from something like the strings family, when you're just kind of, all you need to do is just kind of tune it and you rock your bow and you're ready to play. So the winds and brass family members have a little bit more of a careful putting together and taking apart. And then also we did not talk about how we clean the instruments and so forth, but that would be something that if you are interested in pursuing one of these lovely instruments, we have a course that is coming up starting October 6th. And it is a Meet the Instruments class that will feature certain instruments that you saw today, more in depth with definite specialists that will go through each of the little nooks and crannies and the fun things about each instrument. And so again, that starts October 6th via Zoom from 1 to 1:45, and that's a 5-week class. If you've already picked your instrument and you know what you want to do, that's great. You can contact one of us. Again, my name is Rebecca Carey, and the email address would be rcarey@levinemusic.org. And Kathleen is Kathleen Jacoby, and her email is kjacoby@levinemusic.org. So we do
I'm actually still on my maiden name for the email. Sorry,
Okay.
Kay Ellingson. Sorry.
Ellingson. All right. Well, you can reach out to either of us because we're the only Rebecca and Kathleen at the school. So that would be another easy way, just online. We do have a few questions from our participants today, one of which is there a technology for near zero delay audio conferencing for live ensemble participation? And the short answer is yes, but not widely available. So there's a program, not that we are endorsing or getting paid for, but called Jamkazam, which requires certain microphones, certain connections, and all the parties that want to play have to have that same equipment in their particular spaces, and then you can meet up and make an ensemble fairly functional. There are some other programs. I know Yamaha in Japan is in beta testing mode of another program that you can, I mean, the videos that I've seen, the gal is just on her phone and she's in a coffee house and somebody else calls her and they're just, you know, jamming on a cell service, it looks like. But so yes, but not extensively available at the moment. A second question today is, did you do anything special with your microphones for today's successful demonstration? And the short answer for me is no. I'm happily in my dining room and Kathleen is in her lovely studio. So
I think it's important to know the settings that work the best for music. So in Zoom in particular, there's something called original sound that doesn't suppress non-vocal noises as aggressively. So Zoom is specifically a platform that was originally intended more for like business conferencing. So it prioritizes voice to voice sounds. So if you don't have that original sound enabled, it will suppress any sounds that is not a voice speaking. So that's the only thing that I've done. I do have an external mic that I record on. It's just this is called a Zoom, nothing to do with this company does the conferencing, but it's just another company that has microphones that are nice and at a more entry-level price. And I know people who use them successfully when they're video conferencing as well.
And then we have another question. Is there a specific safety procedure for wind instruments with regard to the virus? Do aerosols eject with the sound? again, the short answer is yes, we are kind of the super emitters of the world at the moment, along with vocalists, just because, especially on flute, as you'll recall, there is nothing that is preventing our air or guiding our air specifically into the instrument. So we are blowing straight across and the air is going through the instrument. And of course, at the very end of the instrument is where another sound cluster can occur. And then any open key on any of the woodwind instruments is another place where the aerosols can be found. So there are many studies that are going on at different universities and different hospitals. Levine is very aware of these studies, and I actually went to a seminar through the International Double Reed Society, had a lovely panel that involved 4 different medical doctors and teams of engineers and so forth. So Levine is very aware of the situation, and we're keen to make a safe environment, but there are not specific safety procedures at this time that are uniform that have been proven to mitigate the risk enough to have in-person lessons at this time.
And then the last question is, absent Jam Kazam, what system is Levine using for your online courses? So I can answer that partially, and then I think that Mr. Rebecca will have a more complete answer. So for Zoom, we've had a lot of success with private lessons over Zoom, so that's primarily what we've been utilizing for that. If I want to play a duet with my students, I record my duet part, and I know that a lot of teachers are doing the same thing. I record my duet part for the student to practice with at home, and sometimes I'll even play the duet with them along on Zoom, even though they're a little bit delayed. To them, it doesn't sound delayed because they're playing right along with me. To me, it sounds delayed, but as long as I stay the course, it's okay, and they can get a little bit of a feeling of a live collaboration with their teacher. And then I think that you can address some of the other things we're doing for what we did for New Horizons Band, et cetera.
Sure. So we've had various courses that have met with success. We use Smart Music for our New Horizons Band program, and the teacher has created different little homework assignments where the students can go in, record. The program is very nice because it gives instant feedback as to, if the melodic contour is the same, but you might not be on the right starting pitch, or you're a little bit delayed in terms of a rhythm, and it will show you where you are getting off if there's a correction to be made. So we have feedback from that side. We have also utilized in our summer flute choir a program called Audacity, which is a layered audio recording process. So it entails the teachers pre-recording things so that students have a guide and then to each of their parts, and then they can listen with a click track to make a unified presentation. And then Miss Kathleen has been putting them all together to make one glorious flute choir representative sound. And then we do also have the capacity to think about different other audio programs such as GarageBand. That's the one that I use to record my part, and then the student's part, and they can practice with and against the duet parts if we're doing just duets. There's another program similar to a layered performance with audio, but also with the video, and that's all across social media, called Acapella. But Levine is also exploring a new program called Cyborg Llama, which is for the PC platform base. So Acapella is mainly for Macintosh, but Cyborg Llama is PC based. So those are some platforms that we're using and exploring and continuing to provide education in this online virtual world. Are there any other questions that we might have? If not, it's been wonderful sharing this time with you. Thank you for attending this Levine Music Open House session. And again, if you have any questions or want to meet some of the instruments more in depth, we recommend coming to our website, www.levinemusic.org, and signing up for some classes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here.